Hello, I'm Matt Dolly, and this is your primetime preview for week number 12, and a special happy Thanksgiving as we go through the Thanksgiving triple header here, starting with the Buffalo Bills heading to Detroit. I guess technically they never left Detroit because they were just there last week as they got kicked out of their home in Buffalo due to that 6 feet of snow. And Detroit, hey, they opened the doors last week, and the Bills, they simply did not leave. And you know what? That's okay. There are only so many plastic tables to go around in the Motor City. And Buffalo, they are coming off a 31-23 victory over the Cleveland Browns in a contest that took place right here in Ford Field just a week ago. Meanwhile, the Lions, they were on the hunt last week in New York City. They're pulling off a convincing 31-18 victory over the New York Giants. That win pushed the Lions' record to 4-6 on the season, which sadly enough is good enough for second in the NFC North. Now, Josh Allen, the sleeve is off. The sleeve is off. I repeat, the sleeve is off. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but it has to be positive news when it comes to that throwing elbow of one Josh Allen. Allen sits second in the NFL in passing yards with 2,930 thus far and averaging 8 yards per attempt and throwing 21 touchdowns in just 10 contests. Per PFF, Josh Allen is the only quarterback with over 10% of his dropbacks resulting in either a big-time throw or a turnover-worthy play. Josh Allen, he don't care what's down there. He's just going to throw it out there because his arm is better than your defense. Now, not only have the Lions been gracious hosts opening their home to the Bills, they've also been pretty generous when it comes to fantasy points as well. Starting with the quarterback position, a position in which they are allowing 26.71 fantasy points per contest there, which is the most over the last 4 weeks. Not that Josh Allen needed any additional help. You have to feel that this scrappy Lions team, if they could somehow drag this game to overtime on Thanksgiving, that they could possibly win this game, considering that Josh Allen's overtime record is 0-4. Now, the guy who's going to be responsible for driving this Lions team is going to be Jared Goff. I guess, it's better to be lucky than good sometimes. And if you are Jared Goff and the Lions, you are coming off of 3 consecutive wins. Now, during that streak, Goff has only thrown for more than 200 yards on one occasion, and he still hasn't thrown for more than 240 yards in any one of those 3 contests. Meanwhile, the Bills, they have struggled in recent weeks when it comes to stopping teams from throwing it around the yard. On the season, Buffalo, they sit 6th in fantasy points per game against the quarterback position and 17th over the last 4 weeks and 27th over the last 2, allowing 20.7 fantasy points to quarterbacks in the last 2 weeks. Now, the one thing that the Bills have kind of got going for them a little bit has been the run game there, courtesy of Devin Singletary. Now, is Devin Singletary getting pushed by the rookie James Cook? We'll see about that. But for now, it appears that Singletary is the main back there, especially considering he's coming off his second best fantasy performance of the season. Last week on this very field, Singletary had 58% of an opportunity share that turned that into 18 carries for 86 yards, while Cook had to wait until the second half where he got 8 of his 11 carries, posting 86 yards himself on the ground. Let's give the Lions their due here as far as run defense is concerned. On the season, they've allowed the 12th most fantasy points to backs this season, but over the last 4 weeks, they're actually one of the more stingy units across the league, allowing just 15.28 per contest, which is actually the 5th fewest. That, and when you hold a guy like Saquon Barkley to just 22 yards on 15 carries, people are starting to take notice there. Now, the other back that people are taking notice of is Jamaal Williams. DeAndre Swift, he's there, but Jamaal Williams leads all running backs this season with 12 touchdowns. Yeah, that's right. No other running back has more touchdowns than Jamaal Williams at this point in the season. No one would have predicted that at the start of the season. I know that for a fact. We knew that the Jamaal Williams, DeAndre Swift duo would have very specific roles entering the season, but no one could have predicted that Jamaal Williams would be hitting pay dirt the way he has. He had 3 more tutties there last week. Now, Williams, he has put up the 13th most yards this season on the ground, and that is something that the Lions are certainly thankful for this season. Now, fun fact, what do Jamaal Williams and LaDainian Tomlinson have in common? Williams was the first player since Tomlinson back in 2006 to post multiple rushing scores in 5 of the team's first 10 contests. Now, I don't care who you are. That's impressive. Now, Coach Campbell, he has tipped his hand here of what we can expect moving forward. Now, unless Williams gets hurt, he will handle those first and second down responsibilities, as well as the short yardage and goal line, which really limits what Swift is able to do and kind of keeps him strictly in that pass catching option there out of the backfield. Even Justin Jackson there earned more carries last week. Williams, I don't even think he's done this week. Now, the Bills defense has been playing a few men short the last few weeks here. They have allowed the 10th most fantasy points to running backs on average over the last 4 weeks, having allowed 522 yards on the ground and an additional 143 in the passing game. Then again, they did just hold Nick Chubb to 19 yards on 14 attempts last week on this field. Now, speaking of on this field, another one of those players, Stefon Diggs. Hey, it doesn't matter what field Stefon Diggs is on. He's going to get the job done. When Josh Allen targets Stefon Diggs, you better believe that that pass is going to get caught. Diggs sits second only behind Travis Kelce with a 131.2 passer rated when targeted this season. Diggs currently sits third in receiving yards with 1,033, just behind Justin Jefferson, just behind Tyreek Hill. And we know that Allen, he likes to air that out. He likes to show off that big arm every once in a while. And when he does, look for Stefon Diggs to be on the receiving end of that, as he has 5 passes there this season that have resulted in over 40 yards or more. Now, Diggs has accounted for 38.14% of the Bills' air yards this season, which is the 8th most in the league, and his 30.93 target share sits 5th amongst receivers. And with the volume in which Diggs has seen, an ADOT over 11 looks even more impressive. After recording 1,000 yards, once again, Diggs became just the second player in Bills history to accomplish this feat 3 consecutive years. He's actually done this 5 consecutive years if you count those last 2 seasons in Minnesota. More impressive for fantasy managers is he has hit double digits in fantasy production in every game thus far, and there's not very many people that can say that. Now, Gabriel Davis, he is opposite there of Stefon Diggs. Diggs, he sits 4th in air yards this season, but he's not the only pass catcher that Allen likes to enjoy airing it out. Gabriel Davis and his 612 air yards, that sits 12th in the NFL, while his average depth of target leads the league amongst receivers with 50 or more targets at 16.39. If you look at the latest 4-week sample there, Davis's target share has increased from 12.4% all the way up to 24.2%, and his expected points per game has followed, seeing an increase from 9.3 to 14.2 fantasy points. It's now about capitalizing on those opportunities and finding that consistency in his game. Now, Davis also sits second amongst receivers this season in yards per target at 11.1. Diggs and Davis, they draw a favorable matchup this week against the Lions, a Lions team that is allowing 44.18 fantasy points per game to wide receivers over the last few weeks, which is the second most, a trend that has been present all season long as they sit 6th in terms of fantasy points allowed on a per game basis so far this season. Now, another great pass catcher there, this time on the Lions end of things. How about Amon-Ra St.Brown? Are you looking for some good eating at the table this year? The Lions, hey, they may be thankful for what Jamaal Williams has been able to do, but they're also thankful for a healthy Amon-Ra St.Brown dating back to last Thanksgiving, where he started his ascension there. St. Brown has seen at least 8 targets in every game in which he has been healthy. And that's the key word there, healthy, when it comes to St. Brown. Now, Goff has a 101.1 passer rating when targeting St. Brown this season, while Brown has gone on to 494 yards, which is 21st in the NFL in just 9 games played. You know that Goff is going to be looking for him over the last month. He is the go-to guy there, as St. Brown has a target on 33% of his routes. Over the last calendar year, St. Brown sits 7th amongst receivers in yards per route run at 2.53. Now, the other receivers here for the Detroit Lions, hey, it's not pretty. It's who they got to work with. Tom Kennedy, DJ Chark, Khalif Raymond. Now, Tom Kennedy, that was a name to remember from the preseason. You know, the one you forgot. No one's going to blame you for forgetting about Tom Kennedy. I mean, even I forgot about him there for a few seconds. But last week, the Lions, they certainly remembered him there, especially on that 44-yard bomb on 3rd down. Now, behind St. Brown, we've seen DJ Chark, I think, once this season there. Josh Reynolds, Khalif Raymond, all take turns at stepping up in some sort of pass-catching role. We've even seen a healthy DeAndre Swift factor into those pass-catching roles for these Detroit Lions. But the big news out of Detroit here this week is that the Lions fans have something to get excited for, as the 21-day window has officially been opened for the rookie Jameson Williams. Yes, that's right. He has been activated, and he, alongside St.Brown, will give the Lions a decent look at what the future may behold. Now, while the Lions have allowed the second most fantasy points per game to receivers over the last 4 weeks, the Bills, hey, they're right there with them, having allowed the third most fantasy points over that same period of time, and they're one of 4 teams to allow an average of 40 fantasy points per game over the last 4 weeks. Now, Jacoby Brissett, he showed no fear. Then again, he has really nothing to lose, and he simply attacked this Bills secondary last week, and he really went after Dane Jackson. Now, some of that you may not be expecting to make big plays this week. How about Dawson Knox at the tight end position? The last 2 weeks, Dawson Knox is averaging 11.9 fantasy points per game, and his 23.7 fantasy points, that ranks 7th over the last 2 weeks there, thanks to his 7 catches for 127 yards, which is the most that we've seen from him all season. In week number 11, Dawson Knox, he earned himself a 26% target share, which was the 5th highest amongst the tight end position. Now, Knox, he could be in for a good day. We're seeing a little bit more volume, a little bit more targets coming his way as he continues to get himself back on the mend. Now, we're talking about a Lions team here that's also allowing 13.5 fantasy points per game to the tight end position over the last 4 weeks and have allowed 3 touchdowns and 201 yards within that same window. And finally, how about James Mitchell and Brock Wright? I mean, I don't know why we're talking about it, but I feel like we are contractually obligated to talk about a tight end for the Detroit Lions since we've already talked about every other position there. It was Brock Wright, not James Mitchell, that ended up with a pair of receptions and 20 receiving yards last week. The Lions tight end position, it leaves very little to be desired, especially in redraft from a fantasy perspective. Although James Mitchell, he is worth a stash in those deeper dynasty leagues. Much like the rest of this defense, the Bills have been strong at defending the position much of the season outside of these last 4 games where they're allowing 10 fantasy points per contest. So if you're looking for a sleeper, a DFS kind of guy that maybe gets you a little bit of something, Brock Wright, you know what? Forget about it. But the one thing you don't want to forget about is fantasypoints.com. Head over there today. Use promo code 22Vipers10. That'll get you 10% off that subscription. And if you're looking to score more, that'll do the trick. And we'll see you next week.